Hello, my friends. D.L. Anderson here. Welcome back to Transformation by Truth podcast as we share the truth concerning these last days and what you must do to save yourself from the violent times that are just ahead. Today's podcast is a word of truth accounting of the end times. The end is coming. The end is near. Today's podcast is entitled End Times 647 Reigning Over Ignorance and Deception, Part 7. How the sword of the Ruach allows you to engage the Father in effectual prayer. The podcast objectives are reveal how we become adept with the sword of the Ruach, analyze how your convictions are the primary inflection point in your quest, analyze the forces that are in opposition to effectual prayer, and analyze how you pray with the sword of the Ruach. Welcome. Now, before we begin today's lesson, I would like to welcome all my beloved brothers and sisters in Yahushua Messiah who have been scattered to the four corners of the earth, who Yahuwah has joined to this ministry for such a time as this. I would also like to welcome anyone who is engaging our podcast or videos for the first time. We trust you were led by the set apart spirit in finding us. And if you continue to be led, we hope you stay with us. For these are troubling times, and an evil day is just ahead. To this end, if you are watching this video on YouTube and you have not subscribed to our channel, click the subscribe button below, and you will be alerted whenever we post new videos. Also, if you have any questions at the conclusion of this video, you can ask them using the link in the podcast description below the video player. Last but not least, if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up so YouTube can share it with believers like us. The more knowledge we obtain. Shalom, my beloved brothers and sisters, and welcome to day 668 of our exposition of lawlessness. In the most recent podcast, we analyze the weapon within the whole armor of Elohim that corresponds with knowledge. Enter the sword of the Ruach. Now, we spent a great deal of time analyzing the path you must follow to unlock this amazing weapon. To wit, you cannot unlock the sword of the Ruach by simply hearing the word of Elohim. Quite the contrary, the word must take root within your mind and your heart, for this is the only way we can become doers of the word. And the man who does the word of Elohim is clearly operating with the sword of the Ruach of Elohim. Facts. Now, we analyze the matter of the implanted word extensively in the Torah of Moshe, the Torah of Yahushua Messiah, part 5 and part 6, which was posted on December 5th and December 8th, 2025. And if you have the time, I encourage you to re engage those podcasts. For now, we should reconsider the definition for the implanted word to see the connection between the one who believes and the one who receives. Once more, please. By definition, the implanted word is the model of the word of truth being planted within a heart depicted by good ground. In this example, truth is sown within a heart of understanding, i.e., the only heart that can yield good fruit. Now, the key line in this definition reveals that the implanted word can only take root in a heart of understanding. Here lies the inflection. Vis-a-vis, understanding is the focal degree of knowledge. Ergo, the implanted word is an illustration of the process in which we receive knowledge. This is crucial, for knowledge empowers us to operate with the sword of the Ruach. And the more knowledge we obtain, the more adept we become with the most powerful weapon in our spiritual arsenal. Simple enough. Now, this speaks to the process in which we unlock the sword of the Ruach. And although this is indeed a critical matter, the more critical matter is understanding how to wield this amazing weapon. Remember, knowledge is the pinnacle of power. Ergo, the man who unlocks the sword of the Ruach, but never learns how to use it, is a man who possesses the greatest power on earth, and he is on his way to lose it. My dear friends, hear me carefully as I say, we cannot afford to lose it. Ergo, we must now analyze what it will take for each of us to use it. Let's get started. The primary inflection point in your quest. Now, first things first, the primary way that we use the sword of the Ruach in our tests, trials, and spiritual warfare is by prayer. And as it so happens, prayer is the primary key in obtaining the knowledge of Elohim. For look, listen, it has been written, my son, incline your heart to understanding. For if you cry for knowledge, lift up your voice for understanding. If you seek her as silver and search for her as hidden treasures, then you would understand the fear of Yahuwah and find the knowledge of Elohim. For Yahuwah gives wisdom. Out of his mouth come knowledge and understanding. And he treasures up sound wisdom for the righteous, a shield to those walking in uprightness, to watch over the paths of right ruling, and the way of his set apart ones he guards. Now, before we delve into the role of prayer in obtaining knowledge, we should execute a quick summary of the primary keys in obtaining faith, obedience, virtue, and the fear of Elohim. Let's make it happen. Now, the table below is a summary of the high points of faith, obedience, virtue, and the fear of Elohim. Now, as you have learned, the key to obtaining faith is by applying pressure against your comfort zone. For this will make you uncomfortable and it will force you to increase your faith, else you will cease to grow. Next, we are compelled to obey by the feeling of shame when we realize that we have come to disobey. And if you would receive it, shame is an evolution of conviction. For where there is no conviction, there can be no shame. And as understanding is the acquisition of convictions, there is no excuse for the one who disobeys. Facts. Now, moving on, we obtain virtue by fiery preaching. For fiery preaching is the most effective way to convict our hearts. Here lies the inflection. Vis-a-vis, if your heart is not convicted, then the Ruach will be evicted. For where there is defilement, he will have no part. Now, last but not least, we obtain the fear of Elohim by dedicated instruction in righteousness. In this order, the Ruach will teach us to walk in the way of holiness, which results in a persistent upgrade of our convictions. Now, if you're wondering why I continue to place emphasis on the role of convictions in our attainment of faith, obedience, virtue, and the fear of Elohim, I'll tell you with the following inflection point. Get this. Your convictions are the primary inflection point of your quest. Per the image to the left, your quest from faith to knowledge is centered on developing and purifying your convictions. And once you reach the spiritual plane of knowledge, something amazing happens. Get this. When you ascend to the spiritual plane of knowledge, your convictions will be aligned with the word and the will of Elohim. My dear friends, hear me carefully as I say, this is huge. As I say, it is impossible for you to know everything. However, it is possible for you to ascend to a spiritual plane where everything you do know is true and right. Praise Yah. And the vehicle that propels you to this spiritual plane is your spiritual train of thought, which is driven by your conductor of consideration. And this makes sense, for consideration is the fundamental degree of knowledge. Ergo, consideration leads to understanding and the acquisition of convictions. To wit, as your spiritual train of thought navigates your thought dimension, he persistently upgrades your convictions while increasing your levels of understanding. Now, that is just the first half of the story. To wit, once you unlock the sword of the Ruach and you resume your quest from the level of knowledge, again, something amazing happens. Get this. When you progress your quest from the spiritual plane of knowledge, you will be empowered to pass every spiritual battle, trial, and test. Along these lines, your quest from faith to knowledge is centered on developing the convictions required for you to achieve perfection in the Ruach of Elohim. That is roughly 1/3 of your quest. In like manner, your quest from wisdom to love is centered on demonstrating the power of your convictions so that you are seated with Yahushua Messiah in heavenly places above. Again, praise Yah. Now, I said all of that to say this. Your convictions are at the source of your ability to wield the sword of the Ruach, and thus they are also at the source of your ability to receive the knowledge and the will of Elohim through the power of prayer. Ergo, as we analyze how prayer empowers us to wield the sword of the Ruach, we must start at the beginning, and that is the power and the evolution of our convictions. And we will, beginning with the next section. Let's make it happen. Who are you fighting? Now, for the sake of time, we should only consider an example in which one has developed the convictions required to unlock the sword of the Ruach. The question then is, how would one use this weapon to make the word of Elohim his or her reality? The answer is sure. Vis-a-vis, you must eliminate every force that is in opposition to that reality. And by the time you reach this juncture in your quest, you, my friend, will have passed every trial and test. Ergo, the only opposition you would have are forces that you can only defeat in spiritual warfare, which is why you cannot succeed if you have not taken up the whole armor of Elohim. For look, listen, it has been written, put on the whole armor of Elohim, for you to have power to stand against the schemes of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against authorities, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Look again, my friends, and listen. Listen. For though we walk in the flesh, we do not fight according to the flesh. For the weapons we fight with are not carnal, but mighty in Elohim for overthrowing strongholds, casting down imaginations, and every high matter that exalts itself against the knowledge of Elohim, and taking captive every thought to make it obedient to the Messiah. My dear friends, hear me carefully as I say, these verses confirm that there are spiritual forces that work day and night to prevent the will of Elohim from being performed in your life. The same forces that are keeping the majority within this nation under the curse of this captivity. Here lies the inflection and the problem. Vis-a-vis, the only way to defeat these spiritual forces is by wielding the sword of the Ruach via the power of prayer. And yet, the majority in this nation have never unlocked this weapon. And when they pray, Yahuwah is not there. As for us, the true disciples of Yahushua Messiah, men and women who have followed us on this quest for many days until now, we have unlocked the sword of the Ruach, and we have qualified ourselves to engage the Most High Elohim in prayer. For by his Ruach, I have shown you how. Now, that said, the manner in which we use the power of prayer to effect the word of Elohim in our lives is quite simple. To wit, all you have to do is be led by his set apart spirit. For it is by his spirit that we obtain knowledge of his will. Notwithstanding, and as you have learned, the will of Elohim is complex. To wit, it is not limited to the conceptual. Quite the contrary. It also includes the social, the analytical, the procedural, and a myriad of other factors. Here lies the inflection. To wit, you must obtain knowledge of all these factors before you can engage the Most High in effectual prayer. We know this because there is one factor of Yahuwah's will that we will hardly ever know in the beginning. Enter the time. Along these lines, you can know Yahuwah's will for your life. You can know all the parties involved, and you can even know how it's going to happen. But when it comes to the time factor, that's the one thing that we usually never know until the time has come. Now, for that reason, you cannot pray effectual prayer at that season. For as your understanding is incomplete, there are matters you have not detected, and thus Yahuwah's will cannot be effected. Now, that said, the question we should chiefly entertain is this: how should you pray in those seasons when Yahuwah's will for your life will not be effected? The answer is sure, and it is the key to unlocking the power of prayer and understanding how we are to use the sword of the Ruach in defense of the glorious gospel and in defense of our destiny in Yahushua Messiah. And we will analyze this matter in the next section, and then we will conclude this podcast. Let's get to work. How you pray with the sword of the Ruach. Now, to begin with, you must appreciate how there are three primary phases of our prayer life, and all three phases correspond to the Tehuda of Yahushua Messiah. Per the image to the right, these phases are consistent, progressive, and effectual prayer. Along these lines, you initiate your quest with a consistent prayer life. To wit, your masteries of the leading degrees of perfection require you to establish a consistent prayer life in which you pray often as you are led by the set apart spirit. Now, by establishing a consistent prayer life, you can work towards a progressive prayer life in which your prayers become gradually more effective. And once you achieve this prayer life that is persistently effective, you will be on the fast track to ascending the pinnacle of prayer, i.e., the highest level of prayer. Now, here's where this is all related to the sword of the Ruach and effectual prayer. To wit, we are at the level of knowledge. Ergo, we are working towards establishing a progressive prayer life. Here is what this means regarding our ability to engage the Most High in effectual prayer. As our prayer life at the level of knowledge is, for the most part, progressive, our prayer life will only be effectual in part. Now, this speaks to the fact that you, at this juncture, don't have all the details required to pray effectual prayer consistently. Ergo, you must remain consistent and progressive in prayer until those details come. And when they do, then you can engage the Most High in effectual prayer. Now, here lies the inflection. To wit, as you are waiting for those details, various spiritual forces will attack you to prevent you from receiving those details. Not only this, but they will also work very hard to cause you to experience spiritual regression. Here is why. Spiritual regression is the primary reason why the majority of men and women never engage the Most High Elohim in effectual prayer. Now, in this order, you should consider effectual prayer in light of the train route traveled by your conductor of consideration. Now, as you go from stop to stop, collecting evidence, you are gathering all the pieces required to engage the Most High in effectual prayer. And if you complete all your stops by staying progressive, you will gather every piece required to achieve effectual prayer. Simple enough. Now, here's where things get complicated. To wit, if the enemy can cause you to regress, it will force you onto a new route, which will require you to obtain new evidence. Not only this, but if your regression is initiated by elicited sin, then you will have to complete the process of repentance, which is much more involved than most realize, which is why the majority within our nation and mankind are repeat offenders. It's because they have never truly repented. Now, the conclusion of this matter is sure. Vis-a-vis, when you experience spiritual regression, you are dealt with a myriad of new factors that push you further away from your goal. Alas, as you were nearing the end of your train route and the juncture where you could achieve effectual prayer, the enemy defeated you in some spiritual battle, and he pushed you further away as he fills your mind with doubt every time you pray. Now, here is where the sword of the Ruach enters the equation. To wit, the sword of the Ruach is your primary weapon for binding the enemy in spiritual warfare. And here is how you use it. When the enemy comes at you, you must speak the word that Elohim has given you. Now, here lies the inflection. Vis-a-vis, the word of Elohim is not limited to divine scripture. Quite the contrary. The word of Elohim includes every word of truth that Yahuwah has given you. For the collective word is the source of your convictions. Notwithstanding, the word of truth Yahuwah gives you by his spirit will never contradict divine scripture, which is why there was never any real controversy with the text. Consider this, my friends, and never forget. By speaking to the set apart ones via his set apart spirit, Yahuwah is empowering us to validate the texts that are truly divine. Now, this is crucial, for the sword of the Ruach is the word of Elohim. Ergo, it is also divine. And here lies the next inflection, which I will offer as a revelation. Get this. The spiritual forces that we are fighting will not respond to any word that is not divine. As I say, this is why the majority within this nation are failures in spiritual warfare. Look here. These false Hebrews are like the 7 sons of Sceva found in Acts 19. Vis-a-vis, they are going into spiritual battle with a sword that is not divine. To wit, because these fools have thrown away divine scripture, they are attempting to command the powers of darkness to do their bidding. What foolishness! My dear friends, we are talking about the kingdom of darkness. Look here, I say. We are talking about a confederacy of death that has destroyed the lives of countless men and women all over the earth for thousands of years. And these tools are going to war with this legion of doom without a sword that is divine. Now, it doesn't take a spiritual genius to tell how badly this scenario will end for the false fools who go into battle with the Ruach of darkness without spiritual power. And yet, if you're not sure, read Acts chapter 19 and see how things went for the 7 sons of Sceva. As for you, my friend, you will succeed where fools have failed. For unlike the masses, you have unlocked the sword of the Ruach. Ergo, your sword is divine. And thus, when you command the Ruach of darkness to be still, they must obey the command that you have given. For look, listen, it has been written, whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loosen on earth shall be loosened in heaven. Now, as I say, the power of binding and loosing is very, very critical as it pertains to engaging the Father in effectual prayer at this phase in our quest. Remember, we have yet to establish an effectual life of prayer. We are close, but we are not there. To wit, we don't have the power to ascertain all the factors of effectual prayer immediately to the point where we, like Yahushua Messiah, can give commands with immediate effect. As I say, that is the highest level of prayer. And for now, we are not there. However, we are at the interval where we are establishing a progressive prayer life. Ergo, we are obtaining all the factors upon effectual prayer gradually, such that once every factor is detected, our prayers can be effected. Now, here lies another inflection. Vis-a-vis, the enemy will attack you while you are obtaining the factors you need to engage the Father in effectual prayer. And this is where you must begin wielding the sword of the Ruach. To wit, you must speak the word of Elohim, commanding these evil forces to obey his word. As I say, you must speak your destiny, your intent, and your purpose constantly until every battle has ceased, knowing that it will be many days before every battle has ceased. And this, my friends, is why you must take the whole armor of Elohim. Listen to me. While you are warring with the sword of the Ruach, the enemy will continue to attack you, for this is the nature of spiritual war. Notwithstanding, this does not diminish the power that we have to bind and to loose. However, it does reveal that spiritual warfare is not a simple science. For where you bind one enemy on one hand, Yahuwah will allow for 2 more enemies to arise on the other. My dear friends, hear me carefully as I say, this is the warfare the true contenders for the seal of Elohim are fighting. These are the strongholds we are tearing down to usher in the rule of Elohim in the earth. And while we are warring valiantly with the sword of the Ruach, we are using the shield of faith to quench the burning arrows. And we are wearing the helmet of salvation to keep our minds regulated and in the perfect peace of Elohim. Not only this, but we are wearing the breastplate of righteousness to guard our hearts from every evil matter. And we have girded ourselves with truth to ensure that we are not deceived in an evil day where the masses have become blind and hardly anyone can see. And that, my friends, is how you pray with the sword of the Ruach. It is how you fight to ensure that Yahuwah's will is done in your life. And should you get tired of the fighting, I admonish you to remember this. There can be no great reward where there is no great sacrifice. Selah. Now, here is the final word. The masses were crushed by an evil horde, for they went into battle without a sword. Brothers and sisters, hear me carefully as I say, I have told you for many days that the sword of the Ruach is the most powerful weapon in our spiritual arsenal. Here lies the great tragedy. Vis-a-vis, hardly anyone is wielding this great weapon, for hardly anyone has the conviction to understand. And thus, a soldier of Elohim who goes to battle with this weapon is even harder to find than an honest man. Heretofore, I recommend, don't go to battle without the whole armor of Elohim and become proficient with the sword of the Spirit. For while many are sleeping, whilst our nation is at war, when the trumpet sounds, you, my friend, will hear it. Now, here is today's assignment. Meditate on today's lesson. And if you have any questions, please submit them using the form at pinnacleofholiness.com. And I will respond to you as soon as I can. Now, here is what's next. We completed today's podcast, End Times 647, Reigning Over Ignorance and Deception, Part 7. And the next podcast is entitled Greater Works You Shall Do, Part 5. I will post this podcast on Friday, May 1st, 2026. Until then, my friends, continue to be led by the Spirit of Elohim, continue to watch, continue to pray, continue in fasting, and most of all, continue to be focused, for the end is coming. The end is near.